Hi, Stacy. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're doing another one of our insider interviews in the community, and you have a lot of groupies in the community already. So you and I have quite a crossover with our audiences, obviously. But when I said that I was interviewing you, everyone was like, "Oh, I love Stacy. I've already done Stacy's course, and like she's got such a great course, and all the things." So everyone's very excited to have you in. AI is like something that scares so many designers, as you know, and is moving so fast. So it's just like we were just talking about before we hit record. So we need to talk about it. So that's what we're going to do here. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on. For the 5 people who don't already know who you are, because I'm sure most people are already following you, and we'll make sure you put your links and stuff down below. Do you want to just give us a quick overview before we get stuck into what we're going to be talking about, of who you are, what you're doing, all that stuff?
Sure, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me. I was equally excited for the opportunity to chat today. So again, I'm Stacy. I'm the founder of The Intelligent Designer, which is an online education platform, online courses to help interior designers confidently start using AI in their workflow. My background is also in interior design, and as I started, like a lot of us, a couple of years ago, to try and understand how AI might shape my personal and professional workflow, I just saw this real need and opportunity to have more designers feel confident in talking about AI so that we could all have a seat at the table in terms of shaping how AI might shape our profession and the industry. So it's a topic that I'm really passionate about, and my primary goal is to just try and empower as many designers worldwide to feel like they have a good grasp of what the technology can do today and where it's headed.
Yeah. And you have a great course, which we will link to in case people want to follow through with more detail on some of the stuff we're going to be talking about. And obviously, go and follow your Instagram because you're just sharing all the latest stuff that's changing and updates and stuff over there. So we'll link to all of that for you, or for everyone below. Okay, we have a lot to get through. So you and I did a bit of like brainstorming on what we thought would be the good topics to talk about. But then I also put a post in the community. You've joined the community now, so you're going to be in
Yep.
there. And you may have seen the post, but there's like a long list of things. So we'll try and get through as much as we can. If not, maybe I'll be able to wring your arms and we can come and talk again at some point. Because I mean,
I would
everything's
love that.
changing so fast anyway. So we sort of like what we say today may not be relevant in the coming months anyway. So anyway, let's do what we can do today. Where do you want to start? What's the best thing to start with? Should we start with our list, or
Yeah,
I'm wondering?
I
Yeah,
think
I
the
mean, I think
questions.
one of the big questions, so maybe we'll just get the big elephant out of the room because it's the question that
Yep.
scares people, is what you're going to know that I'm going to ask, which is AI going to replace interior designers? So maybe we'll just start there and then go from there.
Yes, so this is definitely a popular question. So I'm glad we're starting here with this one. I think that the short answer is no. In the near future, or even the not so near future, I'm not worried about interior design as a profession being wiped out by AI. And here's why. I think, for one, will we see tasks that we do today as designers taken over by AI? Yes, absolutely. That's already happening. So mentally, we should get prepared and ready for that, because that's a reality, not just for design, but for any profession. Parts of what we do today are not going to be things that we do tomorrow. Those will be tasks that we have AI and AI agents helping us do, and we're kind of managing those tasks, but that's not unique to design. Why I feel confident that AI will not replace designers completely is just due to the complexity of the design profession. There's so many things about what designers do, especially as you think about things like project management and site visits and coordination with various trades and vendors. There's so many aspects of the role of designers, and you could say the same for architects as well. And because of that complexity, I think that'll actually work in our favor, that it would be very difficult to imagine a future where AI takes over all of those tasks, particularly the ones that are really dependent on those human to human relationships.
Yeah, totally. There's a quote that I heard in a different context that I have sort of like put into the designer context. Hopefully, I'll get it right when I say it. But like, it's something like AI isn't going to replace interior designers, but interior designers who understand AI are going to replace the other interior designers who are like putting their head in the sand and thinking like, I hope this whole thing goes away, or just thinking like, oh, it's not going to take over the profession, or it's stupid, because there are lots of people who are like stuck in that mentality of like, I'm not going to let robots take over my profession, which is, you're going to get left behind if you have that mentality about it. So that's the way that I've been sort of talking about it with my community. So
That's right. And I think that's a very accurate assessment, especially when you think about just the competitive advantage that the designers who are embracing it are going
yeah,
to have, and this idea of what they will be able to create and produce by leveraging some of these tools,
yeah,
that a designer who's not leveraging it, they just won't be able to compete or keep up at a certain point. Have we reached that point yet? No, but those that today is the easiest day it's ever going to be for you to start to adapting to these new tools and technology. It's only going to go faster. So now is a great time to get on board.
yeah, definitely. Now, I think because it's all changing really fast, we will talk like deeper strategies for those who are already using some AI stuff, because there's been, like, as of us talking, there's been some big changes with ChatGPT and all that stuff. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But let's address for those who aren't yet using AI, or even those who are already using AI, like, what are the key tools that you think are the best ones to start with? Let's start with that. And then we might talk a little bit about some of the ones you're playing around with and things like that as well.
Sure. Yeah, this is a great question also, because there's so much noise out there right now with new tools popping up daily, and a lot of those tools even being marketed towards interior designers. So it can be difficult to navigate, like what applications do I really need, what's worth paying for, what's not. So the easiest place to start, and this feels like an obvious answer, but it really is the best way to get started, is with a tool like ChatGPT. And that's because it can do a lot of different tasks, and it can do those tasks really well. So like anything else, this is more about building a habit. So if you are, first and foremost, I would figure out a path to how can you start building a habit, a mindset shift around using AI. And what I mean by that is, when you sit down to do a task, are you in the habit of thinking, could AI help me do this either faster or help me do it better? And ChatGPT, just getting into that habit of having that open, utilizing it regularly, that's going to be the best way to get started, especially now when you consider some of the capabilities that launched this past week around what it can do with image generation. It feels like a no-brainer that this is a tool designers should be using. Beyond that, my other go-to for image generation is Midjourney. So I think this is another one. If you think about like the category of chatbot and then versus image generator, ChatGPT as your go-to chatbot, and then Midjourney if you're trying to get deeper into a image generator. The quality of their model is really superior to any of the other models out there that I've experimented with, and I've spent time experimenting with a lot of them. And the learning curve for Midjourney is a lot better than what it was before. Even this time a year ago, it was clunky and difficult to navigate through. So those two at a minimum. The third one I would probably layer in is get comfortable with a note-taking tool. So like Otter is a popular one. So it can start to transcribe your meeting notes for you. That is a huge time saver for designers, and just really helps to ensure you're capturing all of those key details. So that's another one that I would say, look to add a tool like that to your tool stack. And if you're doing those three things, you're comfortable with a good image generator, you have a chat bot that you can rely upon, and then you have a note-taking app, I'd say you're in a pretty good spot.
Yep. And just a few things on what you said. So first of all, let's touch in a second on like, do you choose ChatGPT, Claude, like Perplexity,
Mm-hmm.
like which one do you pick? So let's come back to that. The second thing is just a quick tip based on what you said about having ChatGPT open. So I'm in a relationship with ChatGPT. I don't know what you are, whether you are in that relationship or you were with Claude or whatever.
No, I'm with ChatGPT
Okay.
also.
Yeah. And so we've been in a relationship for like since it started, like 2 and a bit years. And so because of that,
Yep.
like it knows me so well now, which I'm sure it does for you now too. And like the more you like start using it and stuff, the better it gets to know you and the better the responses are. And the skill of prompt engineering, this is a skill that everyone has to like understand what prompt engineering is and understand how to get better at it. Because at the moment, like those who aren't using it a lot, they're like, oh, I put in like whatever, some simple prompt, and it's like the outputs are just not helpful. And the problem is that your inputs are not helpful enough.
That's right.
So just learning how to like get a lot better at doing that. But the other thing I was going to say is like with that thing you were saying about going over to ChatGPT and just like asking the workflow, like a good habit to get into is almost having, if you've got a screen big enough, I just have ChatGPT open in a second window on my screen, which I'm sure you do as well. And like
Yep.
I use it like it's constantly throughout the day now. Like it's just a thing of like,
Yep.
oh, well, what does ChatGPT say about that? Oh, what research could I do with ChatGPT? Like you just get into the habit
Yep.
of using it. So just open it, have it there, and just like start using it constantly. Um,
That-
Go ahead.
Yep. I was just going to say, I think too, the good news is I think some of these barriers or friction points, like right now, it's a standalone tool that you have to go out to. I think some of that is going to start to become easier because AI is going to show up in more of the tools we're already using. So for now, you do have to, get in the habit of opening it up. But ideally in the future, we're going to get to a place where it's just so integrated into the tools that we're using. And even with prompt engineering, like if I think back a year or two ago, how important that skill was. And as the tools get better, I think that need to be like, some people hear prompt engineering, they're like, oh gosh, it's this really hard skill that I have to learn. It's really not. And I think that's only going to get simpler in the future as well. As the tools get smarter, they're
Mm.
going to understand with less effort on you of what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah, I was at my hairdresser yesterday. This is a random aside. And I was just helping her with a business idea that she had. And I was just like, oh, let's quickly just talk to ChatGPT about it because she'd never even heard of ChatGPT. So she was like in that land, you
Okay.
know? So I just did
Okay.
some dictation while she was working on my hair, which is now covered up with a hat. But anyway. Um, and I just did some dictation on like blah, blah, blah on the stuff. But what was I going to say about that? Oh, yeah. So I was just telling her, and this is just like the simplest way to think about it is like, can you hear that all I'm doing is just like talking to ChatGPT like I would if I was talking to you? Like just talk to it as a human and have a back and forth and that like strategic thinking stuff. Like if you just start saying, well, I don't like that idea, like blah, 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 try and be polite because I teach my boys be polite to ChatGPT because when the robots come to life, if they remember you as being polite
That's right.
humans, they're not going to kill you. So that's the way I think
That's right.
about it.
That's right. That's the real reason why I launched my AI business. So the robots are on my side.
We literally say it to the boys. We're like, use your manners with ChatGPT as well. Don't be rude to it. Like, anyway. But yeah, just have conversations. I just think it's crazy because if you think about like all the team members you could have that are replaced by having something like ChatGPT, where it's a sparring partner, a thought process partner, a design assistant, all those things is crazy.
That's right. And I think especially this is why it's such a powerful tool for designers. Like if I think about so many designers who are also business owners, they have to wear so many different hats, and being able to take off some of those hats and give it to Chat GPT to do for you. And that's only, I mean, we are just at the beginning, especially as we start to think about agents, which I know for some folks who are they're just getting their head around chatbot, agents feel far off and scary. It's not. It's basically the difference of a chatbot, which you get a response from, versus an agent can start to take actions for you. You start to think about what that means for a small business owner, where they can literally have an army of agents working for them, doing some of those tasks that they would have otherwise had to incur a big expense to hire out. That's where I get really excited to think about the benefits that this will have for designers.
Yeah. So in my other community that I run with my husband, that Stacey's part of, we do some like member spotlight interviews, and I was talking to one of our members in a call similar to this, but in that community about the way she uses ChatGPT, and I thought this was super clever. So what she has is you can have folders in ChatGPT, and so what she has is a folder of her team. So basically her C-suite team. So she's got one folder that's her chief marketing officer, one folder that's her chief technology officer, one folder that's her chief operating officer, whatever. So then she has her chats with those team members going. And so whenever she has a marketing question, she goes to the CMO folder and chats there. When she has a tech question, she'll go there, And so what we were saying before about how when you're in a relationship with one of the things, it gets to know you really well, but then she says the outputs that she's getting from that, just in terms of like this, as again, strategic, for me, it's a strategic thinking partner. Like that's the most useful thing that I'm finding from ChatGPT. Sorry about the light changing, everyone. It's 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday here. So this is the commitment I have to bringing you guys good content. Um,
Right.
So you're going to see the whole sunrise come up. Um, yeah, anyway, that was really all I was saying. But like, that's a super, I don't know if you've come across that as an idea or if you might be doing it, but I thought that was super clever usage.
It is. It's a very clever usage. It makes me think about too. So, and I know some people are curious about when to build a custom GPT versus using the regular GPT, just the generic chat GPT. It's actually super easy to build out these custom GPTs. So that's another like good action step. If you've been using chat GPT for a while, just try to create your own. I see a lot of people now like creating custom GPTs and selling them to designers. And it's like you can easily kind of start to figure out how to do some of this on your own and or just invest in learning how to do it once, and then you can build out as many as you need to. And that's going to be a very, very helpful and powerful skill. So that's an important thing I would say as like AI emerges and continues to emerge. What do you want to outsource and what do you want to actually take the time to learn how to do yourself? Because once you learn how to do it, you're in the driver's seat of being able to create as many custom GPTs as you like.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just another way to think about it.
Totally. And I started playing around with the with doing exactly that. And it's, as Stacey said, it is not hard to work out how to do this. Like, I think I looked at a quick video on YouTube and it's like, oh, okay, that's really easy. But I'll tell you a use case I did it for, just to give you ideas of, like, people will be like, well, what do I use a chat
Yep.
agent for? Like, this is a non-design related one, but just to get your juices flowing. So my 16-year-old son has just started studying economics for year 11 and 12 here in Australia. And so what I did, and it's a brand new subject for him. So what I did was I created his own agent for his HSC economics study. And what I've done is I found the New South Wales, where we live, syllabus for the subject, and I've imported that. I found as many old past papers as I could, and I've imported that. I found study notes that were free, and I imported those. And so now what he can do, and then I've sent him the link to that thing, and he can say, quiz me on this topic. He can say, give me like sparring back and forth to make sure I really understand X topic, teach me about this topic. But I know, because I've taught it on the right syllabus and the right information that comes from the government that's going to be quizzing, like giving the HSC, that he will be getting the correct information. So that's sort of like just to give you a sense of like, why would you have something like that? Because if I had just said, go to ChatGPT and ask, he's not necessarily like learning from the current syllabus for his particular subject. So anyway, just to give that
Right.
example, yeah,
Yeah, and so a really easy place to start too, if you're like curious about a business application for it, would be creating a custom GPT to help you with social media content. Most designers are posting to lots of different social media platforms, and a key reason why you would build a custom GPT versus just using regular chat GPT are for use cases like that, where you're going to be coming back to it over and over again. And so instead of every time you having to tell it, okay, include these hashtags and
yeah,
this is what my brand voice sounds like, and
yeah,
no, I don't typically use words or emojis like that, you can put all of that in once into the training of that GPT. And then you have this GPT that you can work with, that every time you ask it to create an Instagram post, it knows those things about you. So it's a really easy way to get started and make it seem less intimidating. And I love the example you shared that you created for your son that has my
look,
wheels turning of other GPTs I could create.
I made it, and Paul, my husband, was like, he's never going to use that. But I was like really happy and proud that I'd made it. And I sent it to him and I was like, did you see what I made for you today? And he's like, oh, yeah, whatever, like 16-year-old boy. But I was happy and proud of what I'd made. And I thought, one day maybe he'll pop in, like when he's stuck on something, and have a go.
Right.
Um, the other thing I was going to say, because it was making me think about the conversation I'd had with Anna in the other community about her folders. And I think, based on like the little like sparring we just did here, like I think probably it would be even better if you made a CMO agent, a CTO agent, a design assistant agent.
Yeah.
And you can train it with like, this is what our design drawings normally look like. This is what, like, and as you, and the good thing about the agents is that you can upload more information to it over time. And so you think like, okay, I really needed it to help me with this. And so you can add that piece of, I don't know, a drawing or a SOP, like an operating
Right.
procedure or like whatever, to help it learn
Right.
more stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of why I brought it up, because my mind for that use case goes more towards creating a custom GPT. That said, for people that are like interested. We're getting kind of into the weeds of with
Yep.
like folders versus GPTs.
Yep.
That said, a lot of people do have questions about it. And there are some good, like you can even just Google it or ask ChatGPT to explain like when is it better to create a folder versus when is it better to create a GPT, because that is something that trips people up
Yep.
sometimes.
Yep. Okay, we did get into the weeds. Let's go back a step. ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, personal
Yep.
preference. Any thoughts on that?
So even though I would say my biggest committed relationship is with ChatGPT, I'm a huge proponent advocate of like try them all, go back to them too. Like people will say, "Oh, I used Gemini, Google's Gemini 3 months ago, and I wasn't impressed." It's like they're all of these tools are literally in competition with one another. So they're constantly launching new features to compete with what the other one has created. So they're getting better and better. And so you don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but just be aware of what the landscape is. And for perspective, you mentioned a lot of them. So Claude is another great one, Perplexity, ChatGPT, obviously. There's some others out there that are worth, Gemini are good ones to be aware of. And something that I actually do quite a bit too is I'll pop in and out of certain tools. So a lot of times I find that Claude for like pure writing tasks is better for writing. So I'll take the output I got from ChatGPT if I don't love it, and then throw it into Claude to come up with something different. And there's even tools out there that you give it a prompt and it will put it into all of the various models for you in one place, and you can pick which response you like better. So I would just encourage experimentation. Just it helps you to make sure that you're not getting too in the weeds, where that way if another tool takes off, you have to do all this catch up work. You've kind of identified with it. The other one I would throw out there too for business cases is Copilot. So Microsoft's version of ChatGPT is Copilot. So that's another good one to just understand all the ways that Copilot can help, especially if you're a heavy user of things like PowerPoint, Excel documents, etc. There's a lot of really helpful ways that you can use Copilot.
Yeah. So you are probably the same as me. So I pay for subscriptions to all of these tools because I want to stay on top of like what's happening with them, and I use all of them in exactly the same way that you were just talking about. You don't need, like lots of you don't have the funds to do that. That's totally fine. But I do think, and I'll be interested to hear what you think, but I do think that whichever one you eventually do decide to go with, you will get a lot better outputs if you do pay at least for the base level of like whatever options they're offering with their paid version.
Yeah, yes, 100%, particularly with Chat GPT is like the one I come back to because it's like $20 a month for I think the first tier up. And the results are night and day. And what you get out of it, and you can just do it for a month. So see if you like it for
Yeah,
a month. If not, you're only out $20.
exactly.
But so whatever tool you pick, paying for it, you're going to get, I mean, it feels like sometimes 10 times better results than if you're not paying
Yeah,
for it. So I would absolutely recommend pick one, make the investment.
yeah. Okay, let's talk about Midjourney for a second because
Yep.
Midjourney, lots of people might not realize because I think lots of people got put off Midjourney, or designers got put off Midjourney because they were like they go there and they're like, what Discord? Like what? How do I do that? So Midjourney now has an interface on a website. It is not difficult to use that anymore. So it is
Yeah.
difficult to prompt it and get it to do like good output, but the
Yep.
actual like whole head, you know what, of trying to work out how to use Discord and stuff is gone. So do we want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. That was one of the huge reasons I first launched my course, because I was like, okay, more designers could benefit from using Midjourney, but it was a scary, off-putting place when you would open up Discord and see this chat rooms where people were like generating lots of images of like anime cats and like all sorts of
Exactly.
interesting things. Um, so now, to your point, there is a web face or web interface for it, so it's much easier to get started. It is a tool that requires an investment, so I think for the basic plan, it's like $10 a month, so it's not a lot, but you do have to pay for it. I find it tremendously worth it as a designer, and I think others will as well. So it's one of those ones you would have to think about allocating some funds for. And I would say, to your point, the fact that it's on the web now, that it's a lot easier, but there are still, it is one of those tools that I would say there is still a bit of a learning curve. So, there's resources, my course being one of them, other resources out there as well, that if you want to get good at it, it's probably, and for designers, because it's such a helpful tool, it's probably one that's worth investing to take the time to learn how to do it well,
Yeah.
because the capabilities of what it can do are just so valuable for
Yeah.
designers.
Yeah, I totally agree. One thing that I've found useful with mid-journey stuff is, again, with my relationship with ChatGPT, is that I find that actually, like having both open, so I've got mid-journey on one side and then ChatGPT on the other, and actually I get ChatGPT to help me with the prompting for mid-journey, and that's helped
Mm-hmm.
a lot with the output. So like I'd get something and it'd be terrible and be like, this is the prompt I gave mid-journey, like what did I do wrong? And
Yep.
it would say, okay, try this sort of prompt, add these sorts of things in, and then you do that and you get 1,000 million times better output. So that's a little hack there that I've been using.
Yeah, it's a good point. So the other like quick tip I would provide is that a lot of people don't realize with Midjourney that almost all images, unless you pay for the much higher tier plan, like the $60 a month one, all the images that people are generating are open, meaning anyone can see them. So if you go into the Midjourney gallery and say you type for modern kitchen, right? And you find an image you like, you click onto that image, you can see the creator who made it and the exact prompt they used, and then you can hit use prompt and you can use that
Yeah.
prompt. Now the results you might get from that prompt, because it's generating a new image every time, are not going to look like that exact image. But what it does is it really helps speed up that learning curve of like, okay, I've looked at all of these images. Here's the prompts that people are using to get to this type of image. So you don't have to guess. It's all right there
Yeah.
for people to see. So that is a really helpful feature. The other thing that I think more designers could leverage inside of Midjourney is the fact that you can use an image prompt to prompt it. So I use the example of like, imagine if you were trying to describe a space to someone versus showing them a picture and say, create something like this. So leveraging that using image prompts, I find gets you a much closer to the result you had in mind much faster.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I would say is just understanding that there are differences to how you prompt a chat bot, like a chat GPT, versus how you prompt Midjourney or an image generator, mostly around like the level of detail you provide, because image generators actually get confused quite easily, especially Midjourney. So less is often better with your prompt, versus with a chatbot, we would say the opposite. You want to provide as much content or context as you can in your prompt. That's not really the case with image generators, and that's a common misconception or mistake I see designers make when they're getting started with it.
Yeah. And I think, like to extend on what you were just saying, I was thinking like a really good thing you could do is you could take a few images from Midjourney that you like and then take the prompts and then put those all into ChatGPT and say, how could I be prompting better in Midjourney? And we're going to talk about ChatGPT's new for like the updates they've made, because you could probably just do this in
Yep.
ChatGPT now. But yeah, you take those back, you take the new prompt back over to Midjourney, and I bet you'd get even better results. The other thing, just a few quick tips from me about like the things that I've found helpful, putting the exact camera that you might use to take like really good like architectural interior design photos. If you name the exact camera, it sort of like understands a bit better. Using the words hyper realistic, obviously, like all that sort of like
Yep.
ultra realistic stuff.
Yep.
Using, and then there was another tip I was going to give, but yeah, just like being hyper. Oh yeah, the other thing I was going to say is like, um, this has to be something that's like well known, but like architecture in the style of Architectural Digest, for example, like that really helps it to sort of like understand, oh, okay, you want that sort of style of photography. So like saying things, but it wouldn't work with like a not very well known magazine, but it does understand like things that are quite well known like that. So those are just like a couple of other things that I found useful.
Yeah, those are all great tips. Another one I also tell people to remember is that it actually, and this is specific to Midjourney, but it places more weight on the words that you use at the beginning of the prompt.
Mm.
So if something is really like an important feature, like say you definitely want to have brass accents, you would want to put that earlier in your prompt, because further later in your prompt, it doesn't place as much weight on those when it reproduces the image or produces the
It's
image.
it's like some kid with ADD where it like understands the first part and then it like, okay, bored
That's
now,
right.
whatever.
That's a
Exactly.
good analogy.
Um, okay, cool. So that's some stuff about Mid-Journey. Because we're talking about images, shall we talk about what's been happening with the ChatGPT updates?
Yes, let's do it.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar, and I think a lot of designers are starting to hear about it, but some may not have yet. So ChatGPT just this past week released a native image generator. So what that means is it's actually inside of ChatGPT versus before OpenAI leveraged DALL-E. So it essentially have to go out to this other tool, generate the image, and then pull it back. Um, DALL-E was, I found okay. It was not really my go-to for design-related purposes, which is why I spent a lot more time training on Midjourney. Now that has changed dramatically. So with this launch, with how I would describe it of what it does really well is that one of the frustrating things with a lot of these image generators is that previously they work on what's like called a diffusion model. So because of that, the results are pretty random and it can be difficult to control. And so what I mean by that is say you want to be able to upload a sketch and it holds to the geometry of that sketch. Where there's a line or there's a window there, you want the window to stay there. Where there's a door, you want the door to stay there. In the past, that was really hard for a lot of image generators to hold on to that base image that you provided because of the way that the diffusion process works. Now, with this new model that ChatGPT has launched natively, it does a really good job at that. And so this is a huge unlock for designers because a lot of the types of things that we would want to be able to do with these image generators is now getting easier. So things that you could think of using this for, and it is available, I believe now even to free users. It is slow though, so keep that in mind. Like, and there's you might only be able to generate like 2 or 3 images a day, especially at those lower tier plans. Expect that to get better over time because it's so new. But some of the ways that you can use this now, so some of we mentioned of like you could upload a sketch, you could upload a rendering that maybe you created in another program, but you want it to be photorealistic. You could have it help with translate a mood board that you created in a tool like Canva and create a rendering from it. You can even, some of the other capabilities that are really exciting are like, okay, I've given it an image of a one view of a space and I want to see 3 other views, and it will create those 3 other views. It can create elevation. So say you give it a rendered view, an isometric view, it can create an elevation of that for you. So there's so much you can do with it, which is why it's very, very exciting. You could also say that it's a bit scary because of the fact that it is replacing or potentially replacing some tasks that like a renderer used to do. One really important thing to note, though, right now, is it is still not a replacement for technical tools like CAD, like SketchUp, like Revit, because if you'll notice that even as it's doing these things, it's prone to error. So like it might change the geometry of the space or add in things that weren't there. It's not a technical tool. So that's not to dismiss all of those capabilities. Those capabilities are still so powerful depending on where they are in the design process, but it should not mislead anyone into thinking, okay, I can just throw out my, my SketchUp platform. I'm never going to use that again, or throw out CAD. I'm never going to use that again, or Revit. You have to know when these things are helpful and when you're better off using a more sophisticated technical tool.
Yep, definitely. I was just going to show my screen for a second because I've been playing around with it the last couple of days. Um, and I am no expert on this. Hang on, I've got to work out how I can do this because it's only been new anyway. Hang on, where's my thing gone? Just a second, everyone. Let me see if we can make this work. All right, let me put you there so that you're appearing as well. All right, so that's showing that, but I want to show this. That's okay. It's all right, everyone, relax. In a minute, we're going to get to these questions as well. That's why those are open. All right. So there's the SketchUp input that I did. That is the office that I am currently sitting in. I just wanted to play around with this. Okay, the first thing I did was like a not what I'm actually not bad at prompting, so I did what I thought was going to be an okay prompt, and I got this result. Not terrible, like not too bad. Then what
Mm-hmm.
I did, and I'm going to put a training in the group of exactly what I did to get this result, but this is the next result that I got. So you can see it's got the exact artwork there from this image. It's got the exact chair. It's got like much better lighting, like more like what we would do for like a rendering lighting as interior designers. Much better desk. One of the main things I did was like what Stacey was talking about before um, with the giving reference images. So what I did was like not only just made a much more detailed prompt. So the prompting still took time. So it probably took me 20 minutes to do a
Mm-hmm.
prompt that was really good. But then if you think about like how long it would have taken to get a render like that would take hours and hours and hours. So,
Yes.
and once you
Yes.
get probably a template for a good prompt going, you can probably do that
Right.
quite quickly. But yeah, then I added the SketchUp thing, but then I put in the exact light, the exact reference image
Yep.
of the this artwork. I gave it that exact reference image, this thing, this chair, this thing. So like this is where we're heading. So like yeah, anyone who is doing realistic rendering, like it is it's definitely something that you want to be thinking about with AI, because like the
Yes.
actual need for SketchUp and stuff is still going to be definitely needed, because we need to put that input in. It can't do
Yep.
things to scale, all that. You want to say something, so I will stop talking. Go ahead.
No, I think that it's such a good example. And yeah, this is an example of certain tasks, like bringing us back to the beginning of the conversation, like certain tasks, like photorealistic renderings, like these are things that AI can start to do. Or then there's a lot of questions too around like, well, what if it can source products and a list of products, and what does that mean? I think it just means, and we may get to this deeper in the conversation too, but to me, if you think about the types of clients that would maybe try to do these things on their own, like, yes, those will be ones that maybe don't hire a designer anymore. They just like, they're not going to hire an e-designer or virtual design package because they can go to chat GPT to do things like this, create a
Yeah.
rendering and, give them a list of products. So yeah, there will be some, but is that really the client that you wanted to be targeting anyway? Probably not. So if anything, I think about, like, as you think about your skill set as a designer right now, what are those unique things that AI can't do? Things like that are relationship based, like recommending the best tradespeople in town, or doing an exceptional job with project management and managing all of the, how are all of these products coming into the project, and what the tracking's required, like all of these other facets. Leaning into those capabilities right now, I think is going to be really, really important, because there are certain things that, yeah, people will be able to do without hiring a designer. So it's a question of then where do you focus, and what do you really want to highlight with your services, and how do you want to target those types of clients that will still need designers for all the reasons that we know.
Yeah, I think it's like almost a taste thing as well. Like it, in my experience, like it's not great at having good design taste yet, especially if you don't want your home, or the client doesn't want their home to just look like everything that's sitting out on Pinterest. Like the whole idea of being a designer is to have the creativity and come up with the new ideas and come up with the different design, like you don't want it to look like everything else. And so like I think the people who are happy for their house to look like everything they see on Instagram, yes, probably soon that will be the stuff that they will be able to do for themselves, but only if they can use AI. So this is again the argument for like all of you guys staying ahead of like what's capable with AI, because like think about it, if there's clients who don't understand how to do all this prompting and all the tools and all the things, you can then actually do that sort of stuff like quite quickly and easily. If that could be a business model, because you
Yep.
understand how to do this, and you'll be able to produce that stuff like quite quickly, but with your element of taste and stuff like that, and then that human connection that you get from still working with a designer. So there's going to be new business models, I think, that come out of like the development that we're seeing with all this stuff.
Oh, there's going to be so many new business models that come out of it. I think what you brought up about taste is so important, because like taste is still such a unique human attribute, and I think for designers, tools like this just are going to enable so much more creative output. But then the ability that you have to bring that sense of taste to the table, it's like if suddenly everyone has access to these tools, because in a lot of ways these tools are sort of democratizing design. So you no longer need like to know how to do a technical render to be able to, dabble in design. Um, but if you think about it, like, okay, sure, all of these people now have access to maybe easier tools to produce those types of things. But think about then the power of a designer who has taste, who has the know-how, who has all of these things, then plus these new tools. That's where it's like, wow, this is a really powerful combination, which is why it's so important that designers learn how to adopt it,
Yeah.
especially to even you might get a mix of both clients that know nothing about it, or in the near future you might have clients that are like, here are 5 things I came up with from my AI tools, and there's going to be an expectation that you're, as the hired designer,
Yeah.
know how to leverage those same tools.
Yeah.
So that I think you'll start to see both, and that's why it's almost like if we think back to like when Pinterest first came around, and everyone was like suddenly felt like they could be a designer because they could put together a Pinterest board.
Yeah.
It's not that dissimilar to that, but you had to learn how to navigate through Pinterest, so you could collaborate with clients in that forum. You also need to learn how to leverage these tools as another way you can collaborate.
Yeah. And then I think what you said as well is like it's really important that you try to, because the people who wanted to do their Pinterest boards and turn it into their house are the same DIYer type clients that don't really want to pay properly for designers anyway. The high end clients that are the ones you really should be going after anyway. They are still just like, they're like, I don't care about learning how to do that. Like, this is not like, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor. Like, I don't want to do all of that. I also don't know anything about design. I don't have any taste. Like, I know all of that. So please just do it for me. And you in the back end will know all these tools. It will now take you what used to take you 3 days, take you half an hour. And if you get used to, instead of like what lots of you are doing is the hourly based charging, you guys know that I am always talking about not hourly based charging and charging based on the value you're providing. Suddenly in the back end, the value you're providing will still be the same for the clients, but you now have a whole bunch of like automation and tools running in the back end that mean that you can still largely charge the same because you've still got all of those other skills that are, not tangible for the client, but you're going to save yourself a ton of time, probably don't have the same level of staff, all of that sort of thing. I know I'm talking too much, but I just get excited about this topic.
No, exactly. I think it just underscores, like Claire, some of the things you always talk about where, who is that avatar you're targeting, and like the DIYers, yes, are they going to leverage these tools? Because I see a lot of designers when they see, the launch of ChatGPT's new features, they're like, oh my gosh, like, is this going to wipe out this? Like,
Mm.
yes, for certain clients, but those were probably not your ideal. Like, if they were only hiring you because you could put together a rendering and a list of products, like, that's not usually the reason that most people are hiring designers. They're hiring, especially those higher ticket clients, they're hiring you for all of the expertise that you bring, the knowledge and the relationships that you have. And so figuring out how to really make sure you're marketing those aspects of what you do, and help clients, like, be transparent with how you're using AI in your process too, so clients can see it. And it's like, if I was hiring a designer, I would certainly want to hire the one that was leveraging these tools versus the one that was not.
Yeah, 100%. And then also don't forget that like part of the job of being a designer is to stay ahead of new materials in the market, new suppliers, new furniture, lighting, like all the stuff. Like that's your relationship with your suppliers, your vendors, like all the people that you're working with who are bringing out new products. They're trying to still be creative too, and so that's all part of like it. It doesn't like AI yet, it will probably be able to catch up with like new tools and new materials and furniture and stuff, but like you still will be able to leverage those connections and those in-person stuff to also stay ahead with stuff that clients simply won't be able to like do on their own, or DIYers won't be able to do on their own.
That's right. The power of the human relationships, I think, is just going to become so much more important in this AI era. So figuring out where you have those relationships and how you can leverage them as a really a core part of your strategy as we get more familiar with these AI tools is going to be super important.
Totally agree. Okay, so I'm conscious of your time and we've got a little bit of time left. Are you happy to
Yeah.
go through the many thousands of questions we have that we will not be able to get through all of them? Let's go to that and let's go to that. And then let's see what we haven't yet covered. I'm going to have to do like quick skim of the questions, matter of months before. I think we've probably covered that one. I've got a Mid-Journey subscription. I think we've covered this Mid-Journey or Chat GPT. Like which one do you think, if you were going to start with one or the other, what would you, for the image AI,
If you
what
were
would
going
you?
to start with just one, I would say ChatGPT, but a lot of people have said to me, do I still even need Midjourney? I would say yes, definitely. But if you had to pick just one to start, I would say ChatGPT.
Yeah, if you've only got the money for one subscription, that's the one that I would also recommend.
Yep.
Um, okay, documentation. We sort of touched on this, but what do you think about the FFEs, like the floor plans, actually creating stuff to scale? Like, where do you think we're at with that sort of thing?
I think the answer to all of those questions will be yes in due time. If you think about, and my reasoning for that is those are the types of like repetitive, time consuming, mundane tasks that are like ripe for AI disruption. So I think it's just a matter of time before the tools are able to take on some of that more technical work.
But think about how, so I think the thing that you and I totally agree on is like AI is not something to be scared of. It's something to actually be so excited about because think about like for me, the documentation of joinery and like all that, that is the most like painful part of all of our design process for most people. Some people love documentation.
Yeah.
That is not me.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So just think about that. Like imagine if you still can produce all of the documentation that your contractors and builders and everyone is still going to need, because we do have to end up with real environments, don't forget. Um, like if you can do that in a fraction of the time that it's taking you, and also like the human error in documentation is obviously a huge problem. So it reduces all of that, which is a great legal thing for you guys as well, because the risk that you guys have with the documentation side is obviously a big problem, or it can be a big
Yep.
problem if you get things wrong. So it won't make errors in the same way once it gets good.
That's right. And it can start to optimize things too. So I'm seeing tools like if you want to talk about some other tools like generative floor plan design. So for designers who do more commercial design versus residential, where it can produce hundreds, thousands of different iterations of a floor plan and then optimize those floor plans for things like, is this ADA accessible? Is this sustainably friendly in terms of access to lighting? And it can start to layer in all of those data points that are going to lead to like more inclusive spaces, more sustainable spaces, which is another area that I think we should all feel optimistic about.
And I think just an idea that came when you were just saying that, for those that are a little bit further down and sort of starting to think, okay, what are the use cases for creating my own um, agents, my own GPT agents, would be to put in your local building codes, like all of
Yeah.
the things that you currently have to sift through and find all the things. Put those into your own GPT, create one. It's not difficult to do. Work out how to do it. Doesn't take long. Everything, you know, that Marie Forleo thing, everything is figure outable, and it absolutely is. Like, do not put your head in the sand about this. But anyway, you can import all of those things, all of your local codes, everything that you're using, and it will be able to help you. It's like, okay, I'm going to be doing a bathroom for someone who's got special, you know, disability. My son has special needs, obviously. You know, what are the things, what are the laws, what is the legislation around all of this that I need to be cognizant of? Like, what are the other things I should be thinking about? Yeah, all those sorts of things.
Yes. All of those design like types of manuals or books that you're referencing, super easy to be able to upload those and create a GPT. I do teach you how to create a GPT in my course too, for those that are like, I don't want to
Yeah.
DIY it.
Yeah.
But it is, you could also take that route as well and figure it out.
Yeah. It just depends. It's the same with everything. It's like with my SketchUp course, like all these things, you can learn everything. It's just
That's
like, do you
right.
want to skip the
Right.
pain of having to like weed through YouTube, or do you want to just like have someone who knows what they're talking about just tell you how to do it?
That's
So
right.
it's just like there's two ways of doing everything.
That's right.
That's the way you can do it. Okay. I think we sort of covered this. I'm curious what you think about the eye of design. I think we
I think we
expand our
talked a
business.
little bit
Yeah, we've
about
sort of
that.
talked about that.
Yeah.
Create custom GTTs. We've definitely covered some good sort
Yeah.
of early ideas for that.
Yeah.
Paid GPTs available to convert floor plans, furniture selections, and mood boards and images and make space. You guys can go and read these questions in the community if you want to, because it's annoying having someone read to you, I find. I think we've covered most of that. Oh, do you think ChatGPT will have the ability to create an entire house 3D model inside and out from? Okay, so we're sort of talking now about like what we would do in SketchUp or CAD or whatever, mostly SketchUp if you're talking about like the full 3D model of it, or other than, Revit or whatever, whichever software you use, of like the full house.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
I think my tendency is to like don't underestimate where these tools
Mm,
are going. So like a future where like I'm picturing you scan a room with your phone and from that it's able to produce the detailed floor plan dimensions that could then inform a 3D output. I think it's all possible. It's just a question of how quickly we might start to see it and like what is the cost of the technology that it could be broadly adopted. So I tend to err on the side of like we should probably assume that a lot of these things will be possible. It's just
yeah.
a question of when.
And we've touched on this as well, but the future for rendering artists, like you guys, if you are solely offering a business of rendering, like yes, you haven't been replaced today, but it is very close now. Because the next step is for the tools to be able to, someone will create a based on this new technology that's now available. Like there will be people, because they're creating using the APIs their own uh, software on top of these things. And
Yep.
so someone will understand enough about our industry to understand that you guys want to manipulate lighting, you want to manipulate all different things that you can't currently do with what I showed you before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it won't be long till they work out how to do that
The
step as
first.
well. So I do think that's probably like not to be alarmist, because it's just a case of like, okay, well, now you need to think of like how you're going to adapt and adapt your business model given some of the things we've talked about. But yes, the rendering, the step from the you have a model and then it's rendered in realistically is a tricky one at the moment. Um, this was sort of like which one should we start with? So we've covered that. Big fan of using it, but not sure how. Midjourney. I think we've covered most of these really in our chat.
Great.
What else do you think we've missed anything? We haven't talked about much to do with the ethics. Is it worth touching on that a little bit or?
I would say to keep it simple, it is very much like it could be a whole conversation in and of
Yeah.
itself. So I don't want to dismiss it as like not important because it is. I would say what you want to be most careful about is how you're using what could be considered like proprietary data. So if you're using your client's data and feeding it into an open source tool like a chat GPT where you don't have a private secure instance of it, like for example Microsoft Copilot, as a business owner you can have licenses where it's not sharing information back with the model, but with a lot of these free open source models that's not the case. So what you put into it in theory could be shared out. So that is important. If you plan to use a tool like that with a client's proprietary data, having a clause about that in your contract, like when they're signing on with you, get legal input on this as well. But it's probably worth disclosing how you're using AI. Some clients are even starting to ask that, like, do you use AI? How do you use it? And certainly if you were going to use their data, you would want them to sign off on that. So that's a big one. The second one is just be aware it makes things up all the time. It hallucinates. So like
Yep.
you have to still fact check, even it will seem like it's real, like real information, and sometimes it is just purely made up. So make sure you are doing the due diligence, especially if you're publishing something, that you are fact checking anything that you're sharing. And then the third one I would say is I am an advocate, especially if you're sharing like an AI generated image in either your portfolio, your website, social media. Like a best practice for now is to just tag it as AI generated or AI assisted design is a label that a lot of designers are using. And that's just so to create transparency. So you're not trying to pass off a design that you didn't actually create as your own. It's fine. You should show and promote on your social media how you're using these AI tools, I would say you should absolutely post AI generated images as a way to showcase the potential clients that you're using this. And it's a great way to fill in gaps in your social media. If you don't have a lot of new, like if you're starting out, you don't have a lot of project photography you can share and you don't want to just post another designer's work. It's a great way you can start to communicate like your brand voice, but just putting that label on there ensures that you're being transparent and there's no confusion. So those are just a couple of quick tips.
I wanted to add something by just going back to this thing that I was showing you before. So with this, because like from the social media perspective, I'll just give you an experience that happened to me years ago now with sharing a fly through an example fly through that I'd done for a client, and it had an artwork that we were going to purchase for this client, but it was a very expensive artwork. It was something like 20, it was a very high end client. I think the artwork was like $30,000, like a very expensive artwork. I had the artwork in the fly through that I shared on my social media, and the artist, I guess, must have come across it. We hadn't purchased the piece of art yet for the client, but it was intended that we were going to, and eventually they did. However, the artist was extremely unhappy that I had shared their artwork, which is
Mm,
their copyrighted artwork within a model, like a fly through model, and sort of like represented their artwork and used that. So I had to change the whole thing, take it down, like all the stuff. So I just wanted to share this again because this is like an artwork, like you can't see it, it's out of shot here, but this is an artwork that I have here in my office. Actually, can you see it? No. And so I own it and all of that sort of thing. But like if like just be really careful. So if you are giving reference images, those reference images will be copyrighted to the owner of those reference images. And so just from, the legal standpoint, and not you, and I don't think you're a lawyer, but I'm not a lawyer. Um, we are
not a
not
lawyer.
lawyers. So this is not legal advice or anything like that, just to protect ourselves. But like it's more like just be thinking about all of those sorts of things just when you're posting stuff to social media that you've given reference images to.
And also on the flip side, be aware that you cannot, at least this is true for the United States. I'm not sure about globally, so you'd have to check and locally. But at least in the U.S., you cannot copyright an AI generated image. So say this happened to me actually. I produced an AI generated image, and based on copyright laws in the US, I can't claim ownership of that. It was because it was produced technically by AI, not by me, so that's why I can't copyright it, which means anyone can use that image. And so one of the images that I created went viral through, I think, from where I had posted on Pinterest actually, and I started seeing it show up all over Instagram. People wanted to, I think someone was using it as like part of an ad campaign and in all of these different places, which is, I could care less. Like the image doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything to me, but some people might have said like, oh, but that's my image. So just
Yeah.
know that you don't technically own the
Yeah.
AI generated images you're creating.
And also from what we're talking about, from should we be scared about this stuff, like think about that legal copyright context within what you guys still offer to clients. So don't forget that, like, if you are charging clients and basically all another designer or you are producing is AI stuff, like, I mean, I'm not a lawyer again, so I'm not really sure like what the thing is around that, but don't forget that like that's not really something that the client owns, whereas they do sort of like when they've purchased your specific like documentation stuff, like from an IP perspective, yes, that's your IP, but the client owns that because they've paid you for that service. And so like I mean, I don't know, that we probably need to get a lawyer in and talk about all this stuff,
Yeah.
but like, because I think that's all really quite interesting, and it's a very new sort
Mm-hmm.
of area of the law as well. I think the lawyers are still all working out how to
Yes.
navigate this very tricky environment. It's very, very, very unclear at the moment. But these are just some of the things to start thinking about, I think. And just so what I was going to say is like from a competitive advantage point of view of like, well, what's the point of a designer in all of this? Well, we don't, at the moment, the images can't be copyrighted and stuff. So there isn't like you still do have the competitive advantage of like you do have to produce your own stuff and all of that sort of thing as well.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Okay, well, we've hit sort of an hour, and I reckon we could talk for another hour, but I'm very conscious of your time. And I think that's probably like for anyone listening, they're like, okay, that's enough information for one session. So, um, thank you so much for your time. I just like you, we're just like, I'm upset. Like, I love this topic. I just think it's so interesting. And I hope that we've given everyone the taste of like not being scared and more being excited about like what the opportunity is, and not putting your head in the sand, and like go and do Stacy's course. Like everyone who talks about Stacy's course is like talks like there's already people talking about you in the group, so everyone says it's really valuable. So definitely, if you've got the funds and you want to do things quickly and not learn them on YouTube, go and do that. I'll link to all your other stuff below your Instagram and all the other places people can get information. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today. Like that's been super helpful, and maybe in the future as things move, we might have you back in and talk more.
Yeah, I would love to stay connected, and I love hearing from designers. So please reach out. We'll have my information down there. I'd love to hear about how you're using AI, what you're thinking about, how I can help. So don't hesitate to contact me.
Awesome. Thank you. See you later.
Thank you.